Hello, I am Bentham and welcome back to Factorio Towns. In the previous episode we named Ironwood, the iron town in a wood. It's fairly self-explanatory. And it's all running now. We've got the iron loading into the train. And I'm going to start looking at the map to build our next town. We're trying to get to doing science. And the next town on the list is the copper one. And there's a nice copper deposit in the south that I spot, which looks like the perfect place for it. But then I think, actually, do I need a copper town? Do I even need this iron town yet? Because there are plenty of places where there are deposits of iron and copper, where we could just build a science town there. That was sort of my original plan, to build a science town where it initially had access to iron and copper, and then we could use that until we have dedicated towns for it, or at least until the ore runs out. So I think we're going to skip the copper town. We can do that later, and in fact this iron town probably won't be doing much for a while, because right down in the south there is a copper deposit right next to an iron one, both of them fairly small, that seem to be ideal for a science town. So we'll hop on board our iron train and start sending it down to the south. We set it off running, but then I remembered that my car is here, so we'll set the train off and then follow it in the car. Of course, the train is faster. I try and keep up as much as I can, but unless you're really good with like concrete roads, you're probably not going to be able to keep up with the train. Particularly not one that's going around corners, because corners are always more difficult for a car. But anyway, we've brought it to Southbridge South, and we're quickly going to put in some new rails just to the south of that so we can get the train out of the way. Otherwise it's going to start blocking the coal train and, well, I would say slowing things down, but at the moment there's no urgent need for coal anywhere, really. Everything's fairly calm, so urgency isn't required. But we'll get it out of the way, let things continue on as normal, and we'll travel to the south, try and work out how we're going to sort of arrange the rails going to the south. So my initial plan is to have a line going south, and then we'll have a T-junction going off to the west. So I just start shooting down to sort of the edge of the map, and just as we arrive at the edge of the map, I spot that there actually is a little bit of water there, which sort of changes our plans. So I decided to go exploring, even though it's absolutely pitch black and you can't see a thing. I'm just navigating by the mini-map anyway. So there is some water here, and it does continue. The further down we go, the more water there seems to be. There does seem to be some sort of lake. It probably won't be on the scale of the lake that we saw in Rail World, because I didn't put the water settings and the biome settings on such an insane level as I did with Rail World. But it does mean that the rails can't go that way. So I don't know how I'm going to change it. The rails may never even go that far. I'm always sort of planning for the future when I'm building the rails, and having branches coming off going in directions that I expect the rail network might go one day. Because we have no idea how far this is going to go, and how many towns they're going to end up being and things like that, how much ore we're going to need for everything. But anyway, we've got this area in the south scanned. There's a little bit more lake to the west as well, so it's a bit of a sort of funnel shape. So if we manage to clear out all the biter bases from here and go to the very south of it, we might be able to put in some little fort, possibly serviced by rail, and have it cut off the biters from getting into the area, which would be nice. Of course, they could always come around the sides, but it would take them a lot longer to get to certain places. Anyway, there's a biter base here that is inside pollution range. There are quite a few worms in it, so we do have to be careful. But we're going to turret creep in and deal with it, which is what we're trying to do with all the biter bases that are inside pollution range for the moment. Because then we won't have any attacks, which is great. Though once we get blue science up and running, the pollution will go, I'd say crazy. I'm going to say relatively crazy. At the moment, there's barely anything going on because there's so little power requirement for anything. But yeah, later on the pollution's going to go pretty far, and we're going to start to have some trouble probably keeping on top of all the biters that'll be in range of it. Especially if we haven't got some better technology by then. This battle was actually fairly difficult. There were 5 or 6 worms involved in total, only 2 of them were big worms, I think. But we lost 2 turrets, and there wasn't much I could do about it. At one point, there was one that I was trying to repair, and they were destroying it at the exact same speed I was repairing it, which was quite concerning. So the sooner we get some better technologies for dealing with the biters, the better, because it's only going to get worse from here. So yeah, we'll go over to the iron deposit we've got, and we'll start putting in our rails, putting them up as close to the iron as we can without blocking the mining of it, because the copper deposit is slightly more south, and I want to keep things as close together as possible. Because the closer together it is, the less area you need to defend, less walls you need, less flooring you need, things like that. And less sort of wasted space. So we'll start at the junction here as well. We need to make sure we put in the other rail going the other way, and then we'll put in our standard T-junction. Nice and simple. Though the signals on it can get very complicated. Also, I've still not properly worked out how to do the chain signals for it. I think it's basically chain signals going in and through, and then normal signals coming out. But I can work out the specifics some other time. It still doesn't matter that much. It only starts to matter when you have a lot of trains all running on one network and filling up a particular area. And I'm being very careful about how I design this so that there's always at least enough space for one train in between each sort of special feature, like a station or a junction, which is a very good way to do things. It helps prevent a lot of I keep wanting to call them pile-ups, but what do you call it? Gridlocks. That's what we're looking for. Prevent gridlocks by keeping special features of the rails like as far away from each other as possible, and leaving more blocks between them. Because the more blocks there are between them, the more trains can fit and not get in the way of each other. Because generally the problems that you see with systems like this is where two features are too close and there's trains trying to get into either feature from multiple directions, but everything's already full. There was one, I think, in the most recent episode of Rail World, where there were two loops particularly close together, and even though there was enough space between them for trains to sit in, there were just so many that arrived at the same time that it all just jammed and stopped. So yeah, we're trying to prevent those sort of issues. And it's possible that by having these junctions instead of the normal loop ones might help, or it might hinder it. I'm not really sure. The loops can be fixed better with chain signals because they're just because the design's different and works in a different way. Anyway, we're putting in all the signals now. We put power lines in, and we're also going to make sure to put some lights in because once again it is pitch black. There's not much we can do about it. Well, apart from put the lights in. Eventually we'll get the night vision goggles. Though some people don't like those. They do make everything green, which is annoying. And some people don't consider it better than having things dark and putting lights around the important bits. I did notice I was watching some older videos recently of mine, and I found that the night vision goggles were a lot worse back in the day. They used to be ridiculously green, so that you could barely see anything for how green it was. Nowadays they're not so bad, but they can still be quite annoying. But yeah, there were a lot more complaints back when they were just ridiculous. Anyway, we've got the station in place now, and by the way, don't forget that I will be requiring a name for this one. So it's a science town, so I guess science, research, labs, science packs, multiple colours. You could have some sort of rainbow thing. I know someone was suggesting Spectrum as a name, and I think they were suggesting it for a science town, so that sort of thing works too with all different science pack colours. But yes, as usual, go nuts. This could be a particularly weird one because there's... What sort of lab-based prefix has ever made it into a real British town name? So yeah, it'll probably be one of the more odd ones. Unless someone comes up with something different that is commonly used in a British town. I don't know. I do feel bad whenever I pick the really obvious standard one for a town, like when I called an iron deposit in a forest Ironwood. When there were all sorts of really clever other names. I remember... Well, I mentioned in the last episode that I particularly like the name Irony, just because of the double meaning of it, and things like that. But I always sort of skip those over in the end and go for the simpler one, just because I think, oh, it's so simple and elegant. But yes, we might get a particularly odd one for this one. Who knows? Maybe we'll call it Aperture Science, or Black Mesa, or something like that. Anyway, the station is now built, the train is in position, and we've marked out the locations of the loading and unloading. This is a nice simple one because we've got it horizontal, so there are 7 unloading points on each cargo wagon. That makes it easier to deal with because there are going to be quite a few different things being delivered to this outpost. Funnily enough, there won't be anything being taken out again. This is going to be one of the few towns where it's producing something and then using it up on site and, generating something non-physical, I guess. It's generating research. So we need copper and iron coming in, as well as circuits and blue science packs, because I'm going to make those in their own separate towns. So this one's just going to be making the red ones, the green ones, and the purple alien ones. Basically, as it was in the main base, but with the purple science bit tagged on the side. So I start working out how I'm going to do the unloading. It is a bit awkward, because at the moment I'm considering it in terms of both cargo wagons having all of the materials in them. And it is possible to do that, because there's not too much in the way of... there are 4 different things being delivered, and that's not too many to deal with, really. Though it's possible we'll have alien artifacts being delivered as well, I might manually put those in, or I might have them brought here, though it's sort of a difficult thing because all the alien artifacts will come from my inventory, so either I'm putting them in a chest here, where it makes sense, or I'm putting them in a chest in some other location, or I'm dumping them into all logistics systems, which would be a bad idea, because I imagine a lot of these towns will get logistics systems, if nothing else, just to supply me. I'm not sure. But yeah, it might be that I just visit here and dump the alien science packs in. I mean, the alien artifacts in like that, just because anything else would be complicated and odd. Anyway, what I'm doing now is looking at the map and working out how the trains will move. Because the thing about this sort of train system is that because trains turn around if they change direction from a station, because there's no sort of loops involved or things like that, trains can end up flipping round like once per visit to a particular town, meaning that you'll end up with everything happening to both cargo wagons unless you specifically mess with the filter so that doesn't happen. So what you usually want to do is either have both cargo wagons do the same thing, and just sort of have both of them working so that you have more unloading capacity and things like that. Or you have it so that the train always arrives the same way around each time. That can be more difficult to orchestrate. Either you do it by having it visit 2 stations that have it turn around, or you have it, or there's only 1 station it visits where it turns around, and then you have a special turning point. But the turning points take a lot of time. The train has to stop what it's doing and pull into this thing, stop dead, and then pull out again. And it's slow. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not sort of aiming for things to be fast right now, but we don't want to put things in that are gonna make a significant negative impact on the speed of things, if we can avoid it. So we'll have to work out how to do that. For now, I'm just treating it as if both sides of the train do the same thing. Also, what I've decided to do is ignore the iron and copper thing for now, because we do have it supplied in the main base anyway. I was sort of trying to set it up for future reference, but at the end of the day, it's probably best to run off the iron and copper supplies that we have in the town for now. And then once things are moving more, things are more set in stone how it's going to be arranged, we'll have a better idea of how exactly the train is going to work, whether it's going to have both cargo wagons being identical or whether it's going to arrive the same way around each time. So for now, all we need to deliver is circuits and, of course, blue signs, but at the moment we don't have a specific town set up for that. That will be the next one after this one. So yeah, we just need a train coming in from Chipton, and that's not even particularly vital, because right now we need to work on getting the iron smelting and the copper smelting set up, get it all hooked in place, and get things actually working, get science packs being made. And there is a little bit of science we can do, because I think I didn't do the research that requires red, green, and alien. So that is an option. I think it's all just a couple of rocketry things. So at the very least, when we get the science town set up, we can get that running, and then we can work on the blue science town while that research is being completed. Anyway, I decided to hop over to Redport, resupplying on advanced circuits and normal circuits. I could have just got them from Chipton, but I decided to be awkward, I guess, and go there and said, oh, I guess it's 2 birds with 1 stone. I also visited Colbury, resupplying there, sorting out concrete and stone bricks and things like that. And I also hop up to Ironwood as well, mostly just to check on how it's running, because when I left it, things hadn't built up yet, and I wasn't yet 100% sure that everything was properly connected up. What with there being trees in the way, I can't tell if all the belts have come out right. So now that the system's built up, I can see all the furnaces are full as well, meaning they're all operating, and they all appear to be unloading. So that's fine, and when we actually need some iron being delivered in, we have the town for it. We will probably need to do some more work to get it up to a good speed, but the basic infrastructure is in place, and that's the important thing. Anyway, I crash into a turret as I'm making my way back. There's a lot of crashing in this episode. I keep underestimating how fast I'm going and running into something that I'm when I'm arriving at a town. So I think I hit multiple rocks, a turret, and just now I believe I hit that furnace too. So we'll get that repaired up as well as the car. I need to keep an eye on the car's health, because we don't want to lose it. It's got a lot of stuff in it. I mean, the stuff's all replaceable, but it's annoying, particularly the stone stuff, because at the moment we don't have a very long-term stone supply. There are all sorts of little stone deposits around the place, but it's awkward to set each one up. We want to avoid wasting it if we can. he says as he's continuing to add more flooring in around this entire place. But I want this place to look nice. I think that's important. I mean, a lot of this is for the aesthetic, because if you wanted if you wanted a factory that was efficient, you wouldn't build it in a bunch of separate towns. This is supposed to look good and have a certain feel about it, I guess. So efficiency goes out the window for now. Well, to an extent, I try and fit it in where possible, but I guess the look of it takes precedence. Speaking of which, we're going to move this whole thing along by one. I decided that it could look a bit nicer if it was up against the iron deposit, and also it did work out in terms of like efficiency or factory design, because it meant I could put a belt balancer in place to make sure both sides of the belt are full of iron. So then we'll connect up the miners. At the moment we've only got 3. We'll probably need a bit more than that. Well, I mean, we're just trying to get it operational for now. We're putting in the basic system, and then once we have the science operational, we can see what sort of throughput we need. When I was working out how to build the science town, I did have a look at the requirements for each science pack, and it looks like in order to make 1 red and 1 green science pack, you need 1 copper and 8 iron. I think that's right. And I think I'd calculated that in the past and got it wrong, because I used to think that it was something like 4 iron to each 1 copper, and I think that it was because I got confused about gears, because apparently gears are made of 2 iron plates, which is weird. I always feel like it should be 2 gears made for 1 iron plate, but then I don't know if that really makes sense or not. But yes, we're putting in the smelting for the copper now. We only need 2. Well, we're only putting in 2 furnaces for this, because it is the lower throughput item, and the limiting factor will probably be iron. We'll probably need to worry about that more. So I imagine that even though the iron deposit is bigger than the copper deposit, it will probably run out first because of that, which is sort of annoying in a way, because the copper deposit is further out and I'd like to get that dealt with more quickly. I guess what I could always do is go crazy, put a bunch of miners on it and try and clear the whole thing out, but that would lead to a lot of pollution, like a lot of unnecessary pollution, and we probably don't want to attract the attention of the biters more than necessary. Speaking of which, there is a base up in the northwest there, which is very concerning. It's appeared in the location of that last base that I got rid of, and it's much bigger. It's a lot more dangerous looking. There were far too many worms for my liking, and I'm pretty sure that I can't take it on. I don't think I have the firepower for it, even with all the turret creeping. So that's a bit awkward. It's already in pollution range, and in fact the pollution may already be like washing around it and closing around behind it, which shows how much we'll be getting to. I'm not sure if that's like 100% the case yet, but it's not good. It shows that we are reaching very rapidly the limits of what our military technology can do. We want to get the blue signs going as quickly as possible so that we can develop some better techniques for taking out the bases. Anyway, this one isn't so bad. This one's all about spawners. There are only 1 or 2 worms here, I think. I don't think there's any big worms, because I don't have to have any sort of... There's no issues with needing to urgently repair a turret because of how much damage it's taking. So yes, we just run a column, 1 turret at a time, through the middle of it. Each turret is able to destroy a bunch of bases. It's quite cool to watch it just like flying all over the place, blowing them all up. Especially when you can plonk one right in the middle of a group of as yet undestroyed ones. Anyway, we slowly make our way forward, and it gets easier and easier as we go, because there's less biters being thrown at us, until there's only like 2 or 3 bases left, and I can just deal with them myself, as long as I have the turrets handy to back me up. Then we'll gather up all the artifacts. We can take them all back to, well, I say the main base, but I don't know whether we'd actually be taking it to the main base. For the moment, there is some storage there, but eventually that's going to go, and I guess we'll just have our storage in the science town. Anyway, you may have spotted there that there were a couple of biters I had to deal with, because they were running down to the south from that unassailable base that we saw, which is interesting. I guess they were like mounting an attack, but for some reason they were going past the place they were attacking in order to prepare their attack force, which is a bit weird, but I guess that's just how they work sometimes. Or maybe they were coming to attack me. That's also possible. It's hard to say what the specific motivations were, what particular things they were going to destroy. Now, I can't remember if this has happened yet or whether it happens in a minute, but there is a biter attack on Chipton, which is a bit worrying. I guess it's from that base, and it shows that they mean business. They're not happy about the pollution, and they're getting a move on. But yes, we're going to set up a radar here, as we do in all the towns. We might set up 2 in this one, just because it's a bit more out of the way than the others, and I'm sticking this one quite a way out to the west, so we could put another one in like the lower east and get a bit more coverage from that. But yes, this one will give us constant coverage of that base, so we can keep a very close eye on it, and we'll also put some defences in there. Yeah, there's the attack on Chipton. It's not good. We're probably going to be seeing that for a while. It's going to be a while before we have the technology to deal with that base, I think. I could give it a shot, but it's probably not a good idea. I imagine it's fairly dangerous. But yes, we've got a little radar station there. We're making sure to have a lot of guns placed around the particular place because it's a pretty dangerous place. But anyway, we've come to the end for today, so I shall say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time.